Welcome back to WION The World as well. Thank you so much for staying with us. My name is Heem Kaur Surya and here's what we've lined up for you on Speed News today. German news magazine Der Spiegel claims the private data of several top members of President Donald Trump's administration can be accessed online. This includes phone numbers, email addresses and passwords. As per the report, data related to National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth can be found via commercial data search services and hacked data that's dumped online. The report says that the phone numbers and the email addresses, mostly current, were in some cases used for Instagram and LinkedIn profiles, cloud service Dropbox and apps that track a user's location. US President Donald Trump has announced plans to impose sweeping 25% tariffs on cars from overseas. The US President says levies will take effect on the 2nd of April, when he is also expected to unveil reciprocal tariffs on other imports. Regarding the April 2nd announcement, Trump indicated that the measures may not be for the like-for-like levies that he's been pledging to impose. Experts warn that these tariffs could drive costs of cars higher for consumers. And according to the Center for Automotive Research, the U.S. automotive industry relies heavily on imported parts. The U.S. imported $474 billion worth of automotive products in 2024, including passenger cars worth $220 billion. The biggest suppliers include Mexico, Japan, South Korea, Canada, and Germany. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney said that the new tariffs are a direct attack on his country and that the trade war is hurting Americans. Carney announced support for all in Canada auto manufacturing. Brazilian President Lula da Silva has said that Brazil cannot stand still in response to US President Donald Trump's trade tariffs. Brazil is the second largest exporter of steel to the United States after Canada, shipping over 4 million tons in 2024. During his visit to Tokyo, Lula said that the US president should measure the consequences of his tariffs on the United States, such as inflation. He further added that one of the measures to counter Trump's tariff is to overtax the American goods.
Depois passamos as palavras.
Ukraine has said that a massive Russian drone strike targeted Kharkiv city, hitting civilian infrastructure and residential areas. At least 4 fires broke out after the drone strikes, with the largest one engulfing an industrial building. Preliminary reports indicate that at least 9 people were injured. Emergency services, including firefighters, police, medics and the utility crews, rushed to the scene, working to contain the damage and assist the victims. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said the United States will examine Russia's requested conditions for agreements with Ukraine, but cautioned that a peace deal will take time. Russia and Ukraine agreed in parallel talks with U.S. envoys in Saudi Arabia to halt strikes in the Black Sea. But the Kremlin said that a revival of the deal on the Black Sea was subject to a number of conditions and that Russia was discussing sanctions relief from the United States. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky expressed hope that the U.S. has enough power to press Russia into an unconditional ceasefire. At a joint press conference with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris, Zelensky said sanctions against Russia should remain in place and be strengthened. French President Emmanuel Macron renewed the call on Russia to accept a 30-day ceasefire without conditions and said it was too early to consider lifting sanctions. He warned that Russia was still showing a desire for war despite efforts to forge a ceasefire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has threatened to seize parts of Gaza if Hamas does not release the remaining hostages. The renewed threat comes amid intensifying protests against Hamas by Palestinians in Gaza. Defense Minister Israel Katz has also warned Gaza residents of expansion of military operations, asking them to demand Hamas's removal. Katz asked residents to learn from protesters in Beit Lahiya and northern Gaza. The rare public show of opposition to Hamas has continued in Gaza for a second consecutive day, with demonstrators chanting slogans and calling for an end to the war. Another protest video from Sharjah also shows hundreds calling for the dismissal of Hamas, indicating the anti-Hamas protests may be spreading. The United Nations has said that the renewed Israeli operations have displaced 142,000 people in just 7 days. Israel's resumption of intense bombardment across Gaza has shattered weeks of relative calm brought on by the truce. Just over a week since the IDF resumed operations, after a ceasefire, Israel has said 2 projectiles were fired from Gaza, with one intercepted and the other landing near the border. The return to fighting has also led to mass protests in Israel, demanding a return to negotiations to bring back the remaining hostages and bodies. Protesters rallied near Netanyahu's residence, calling for immediate elections. Israelis also gathered near the parliament, demonstrating against a bill that would increase political influence over the appointment of judges. The measure could spark a new constitutional crisis and help the government enact policies that have drawn fierce criticism. U.S. President Donald Trump's Homeland Security Chief Kristi Noem visited El Salvador, where she signed a security alliance of fugitive enforcement memorandum of cooperation with the Minister of Justice and Public Security, Gustavo Viatoro. Noem explained that El Salvador's President Nayib Bukele has agreed to continue the partnership for making sure that the nation will continue to accept trendy Argua criminal gang members. Noem visited also the mega prison where hundreds of Venezuelan migrants have been deported under contested legal grounds. For the first time in recent history, Cuba has authorized the use of agricultural land to foreign company, hoping to yield better rice crops. Despite the limited official information, it seems to be yielding positive results in its performance. In January, reports said that Cuba had handed over 308 hectares of land in the western province of Pinar del Rio to a Vietnamese company. However, it has been emphasized that the rice will stay in the country. Early this month, it was reported that 16 hectares cultivated by the Vietnamese with their own variety of rice achieved a yield of 7.2 per hectare. This was later confirmed by the Vietnamese ambassador to Cuba, El Quang Long. In Cuba, each person on the island consumes an estimated 60 kilograms of rice per year, making it one of the highest rates in the region. Cracking down on pro-Palestine activism, U.S. authorities have detained Rumez Öztürk, a Turkish student at Tufts University, Massachusetts, intensifying concerns over Trump administration's drive against protesting foreign students. Surveillance videos obtained shows 6 masked individuals taking away Öztürk's phone as she yelled and was handcuffed. Her lawyer filed a petition in Boston federal court stating that Öztürk was on her way to meet friends for iftar when she was detained by U.S. Department of Homeland Security agents without any explanation. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials have revealed that Rumeza Öztürk would be deported, protesting against the Tufts University students' detention. Protesters gathered at Somerville, Massachusetts, holding placards and shouting slogans. Öztürk supporters say her detention is the first known immigration arrest of a Boston area student and raise fears of who could be Next is part of a crackdown on pro-Palestinian protests. Hundreds of Balinese Hindus flocked to beaches on Indonesia's tourist island to participate in the sacred monastic purification ritual. Participants dressed in white perform the ritual, which begins with a grand procession. They then walk from temples towards the sea, carrying and offering the sacred objects, accompanied by music and chanting. Locals also perform ceremonies involving traditional daggers, and this ceremony aims to clean the stains of the universe ahead of the Nyepi, the Day of Silence, marking the Balinese New Year. And on this day, residents of the Hindu-dominated island stop regular daily activities, do meditation, fasting and introspection. The ritual gave foreign nationals and tourists a chance to witness Bali's unique Hindu tradition. Gunmen killed at least 6 people in coordinated attacks in southwestern Pakistan that largely targeted bus passengers based on their ethnicity. According to a police official, militants targeted passenger buses and security officials in multiple districts of Balochistan, killing at least five non-local passengers and a security official. The police official said the militants stopped passenger buses and identified non-local travelers before killing them. Dozens of militants carried out the attacks after they took control of major highways and set up posts to search vehicles. Pakistan's Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi called the attacks a cowardly act and a crime against humanity. He said targeting travelers by identifying them is barbaric and brutal. No group has claimed responsibility for the attack yet. The Vietnamese government has approved a trial launch of Starlink internet service in the country. The government said that the trial will extend until the end of 2030, allowing the US firm to launch its internet services is seen by some analysts as one of the measures the Southeast Asian industrial hub has taken to avoid being hit by US tariffs. It is not yet clear if SpaceX has applied for a license to launch its service in Vietnam. The government's official statement said the company is allowed to provide fixed and mobile service plans throughout Vietnam. However, they've capped the subscriber count at 600,000. Around 67% of the Americans say they would not consider buying or leasing a Tesla. And the reason is Elon Musk himself. According to Yahoo News and YouGov poll, around 30% respondents said Musk was the sole reason. 26% said that he was contributing factor. The poll was conducted between the 20th and the 24th of March. Around 1,600 adults were part of this survey. This result, of course, indicates a dramatic decline in his popularity since November. Tesla has been facing growing backlash due to Musk's political ties. Incidents of Tesla facilities getting vandalized have been reported as well. A movement called Tesla Takedown is also gaining momentum, urging consumers to boycott the brand completely. The sustainable aviation fuel industry is not on track to meet its 2030 targets, according to a report by Boston Consulting Group. While European airlines are expected to meet a mandate of 2% sustainable fuel use this year, costs remain a major barrier. SAF is 3 to 5 times more expensive than the traditional jet fuel. Airlines and airports are only allocating about 1 to 3% of their budget to sustainable fuel, which is far below what is needed. Although global supply has increased by over 1,000% in the past 3 years, the number of production projects has dropped sharply. Boston Consulting Group warns that supply could fall between 30 to 45% short of the required levels by 2030. The euro weakened to a 3-week low and the yen held steady after US President Donald Trump announced tariffs on imported cars and light trucks. Investors fear the move could slow US growth and stoke inflation. Despite hopes for limited tariff impacts, the euro fell before recovering slightly, while the Mexican peso dropped over 0.5%. The Canadian dollar also weakened. Analysts warn the tariffs could prolong trade uncertainty, with investors now eyeing Trump's next round of reciprocal levies, which are expected next week. Global markets remain on edge over the potential economic fallout as well. Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva has criticized US President Donald Trump's new tariffs, warning they could harm the American economy by driving up prices and fueling inflation. Speaking in Tokyo, Lula vowed to challenge the 25% tariff on Brazilian steel at the World Trade Organization and hinted at retaliatory measures. The US imposed the levy on the 12th of March, making Brazil the second largest steel exporter to face the tariff after Canada. Lula, who also met Japan's Prime Minister to strengthen trade ties, said Brazil cannot remain silent and must act against protectionist policies. Wildfires in South Korea are now the largest on record, having burnt more forests than any previous blaze. As the death toll rose to 26, more than a dozen fires broke out over the weekend, scorching wide swathes of the southeast. The fires have forced around 27,000 people to urgently evacuate and cut off roads and down communication lines as residents fled in panic.